Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome. If you've been listening to the podcast, thanks for coming back. Today we're going to talk about verbal. Maybe Hans can kind of give it even a better title here.
When not to use verbal out.
When not to use verbal out.
Or when not to out the dog verbally, but physically.
Yeah, and he'll explain obviously what.
Yeah. I think the second would be even better. When not to use, when to out the dogs physically and not verbally.
Okay. And it sort of came from a discussion in your Facebook group, and the person was respectful, but as I was reading the thread, I said this would.
Yeah, it was rare, but most people say you're stupid when they disagree with you.
Yeah.
Or somehow they,
the two different worlds of on the field performance versus real life.
I'm big on sophistry.
Sophistry. You guys look it up. Sophistry.
Sophistry. There's the Greeks came up with. They were like somebody will say you're sophisticated, right? And when they say that, they mean you're really, good. You like fine wine and. Fine cars, fine watches, fine everything, right? And you also can speak really well and, stuff like that. That's what it means sophisticated. So in old Greece, what happened was the politicians back then, they had maybe good ideas, but they didn't present them themselves. They hired people, speakers who would present their ideas, because just because you are a good politician, we have good ideas, doesn't mean you are a great orator, right? Yeah. And so they hired speakers, and there were different schools, philosophical schools. And one of the schools was Sophist school, and they were the best, right? And so they hired them, but the problem was the opponent would also hire the speaker from that school. So now you have these two best, and they couldn't get upper ground. Yeah. So they start using what's now known as sophistry or logical falsehoods, right? And in order to convince the Congress, or Senate rather, that their idea that is better, so it looked good, but it wasn't true. And that's what sophistry is. It's a logical kind of cheating logically. And there's 5 basic of them. I studied it a little bit, but then there is like hundreds of different derivation of the basic 5, right? And like typical. What we see when you discuss stuff on Facebook or somewhere like that today, or politicians do it all the time. And I'll tell you, once you learn these sophismas, what they are, when you hear like some politician having interview with, I don't know, Tucker Carlson or something, right? And the TV commentator, announcer, moderator, whatever you want to call it, they don't get it. I scream at the TV, right? So typical one is, I'll just give you 1 or 2 just so we can start this, is that for you say, you attack the other person. So in other words, you tell Democrats, why did you do this stuff, right? And they say, yeah, but Trump, that's sophistry right there. We don't talk about Trump. We're talking about you. Yeah. And that's called ad hominem attack. You've heard that, right? And then you have other ones which you will say, that's what this Jean-Pierre, whatever woman says all the time. You know, you say the same thing different way as a proof, right? So for the typical book example is, he's a bad person because he has a bad character. You know, he's dishonest. Well, you just said same thing two different ways. That's not a proof. Yeah. If you want to prove that somebody is a bad person, you got to show what bad things he's done, right? Yeah. And there's 5 of those, right? Basically, I could probably come up with all of them, but I'm not going to go there that far into tangent, right? But it drives me crazy when people discuss stuff, you know, and they're using these sophisms, and they're not even aware of it. Yeah. And I tell them, you cannot say that. I say, why not? You know, no, because it's not logical. Yeah. You know, you gotta be fair when you're having discussion. Discussions are about clarity, not about me convincing you. You know, you're doing right or wrong. I'll tell you what I believe, and you tell me what you believe, and then you can decide, if you have open mind, who is right and who is wrong. That's up to you. Yeah. But
presenting the case.
You got to present the case, yeah. and the opposing side present their case, yeah. And then, you know, I personally, I crave somebody disagree with me and showing me that I'm wrong.
Yeah,
because I don't want to be wrong, yeah. Right? But if you tell me, you know, when I say something, you put a little ha-ha emoji, I know you're an idiot. You know, I don't want to talk to you. Yeah. You know, or I already lost I already won the fight. You have nothing else to say and put ha-ha emoji there. Yeah. You know. Anyway, what do we want to talk about?
About out the Aquaman in real life versus on the sport base. I mean, basically, that's kind of that was a discussion.
That's always, you know, I train dogs. There's 2 types of protection. You know, there's 2 types of obedience and tracking and all that. But let's just focus on protection now, okay? There is what I call working protection, and then there is sport protection, right? And they're diametrically, completely different things, right? Because if you train dog sport protection, that dog is not suitable for street protection. Now, he may be suitable because genetically he can override the sport training when he is in real life scenario on a street, yeah. Right? You cannot. You must not, you should not, and I believe you must not substitute or mix the sport protection with the work protection. Now, people say Hans doesn't like sport. I don't dislike sport. If you want to do sport, do sport. I'm perfectly okay with it. I've done sport, you know. I've been second in nationals. In PSA, you know, I don't know what year, for 2005 or something, you know, I don't know what year it was, I can't remember, I don't care. But, you know, I've done sport and I've done Schützen. I was not that great in Schützen, but I mainly joined Schützen clubs to learn what they do over there, right? And certain techniques and stuff. And they're applicable or usable, but you gotta know the difference. So when you start training a dog, you got to determine what are you going to train the dog for. Yeah. So, for example, I get calls and people say, oh, I do sport and I want the dog to be personal protection. Well, you can do it, but if you are a novice, it's a tall order, okay? You should do either sport or protection. Now, you can do both. I could do probably both with the same dog, but it's very difficult, right? Because there's this undesirable association from the sport and carrying into the work protection, meaning, for example, in sport protection, the dog is targeting the equipment, where in personal protection, dog should target the man. That's what that is all about. And there is a stuff which people, a lot of people are mixing it. They develop this sport protection into street protection, and I call that sportism.
If you guys hear that, which you probably have on the other podcast, that's what Hans means.
Yeah, and it's, in my opinion, I stay away from sportism or sport even when I want to do street protection. Same way as I will stay from street protection if I would do sport. Okay, and so when I show videos sometimes, like I don't know, last week or whenever, I'm selling one dog to law enforcement, and the dog bites, and he's like badass, you know, he bites really hard. And the handler comes and lifts him up, grabs him by the collar, and lifts him up and holds him up in the air until the dog lets go, and then pulls away under 90 degrees, you know, away from the bite. And people say, well, the dog should out verbally. And there's so much issues with this statement. And all right, so first of all, when you're lifting up the dog, that's not necessarily out. When you're lifting, you can either lift up the dog or choke the dog off. Now, I'm not big on choking off, I'm lifting up. So the dog tends, when you lift him up and push actually him into the bite, the dog kind of let go, and then you pull him away, right? Okay. Yeah, so up and push into the bite, you know, and then lightly, and then pull away, right? Because if you start pulling the dog away, he will clamp harder because you're taking the bite away from him. You know, you basically, like, if you want to do it correctly, you kind of lift him up, push him. You want it? I guess not, right? Because you cannot breathe when I'm pushing him into the bite, right? And so the dog lets go, and then I pull him off, all right? So that's what I recommend for working dog. Now there is a choking off, which is different, and basically it's done with choker collar, and you just, you know, when the dog is on bite, just choke him, and he got grasped for the air, and then you pull him off. Yeah. But that's two different things. The choking off is like a last resort for me. You need to know how to do it, and you need to understand it. But I don't like it because it's kind of hurtful somewhat to the dog because you're choking him. You know, when you're lifting him, you're not lifting him. You're not choking him. Okay. And the people see that on the videos from Ginopur, from Alpine Canine, of dogs which we are selling, and they say, well, how come the dog doesn't out on command? And I said, because it's not out. It's not out. I'm not telling dog to let go. I'm making him let go. Two different things. So if I'm lifting him up, if the dog, you know, so I don't say out or let go or pust or whatever, right? I don't say it because if I say pust and then I start lifting the dog off, he's gonna hear me saying pust. I gotta take that stuff away. They clamp even harder, right? Yeah. So you are not saying anything. You just come and lift him up, and he pull off and you praise him, good boy, and you're done, right? Okay, and then. So you are not, where in sport.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, in sport, you don't do that stuff. Sport is just basically showing to the judge that you can control the dog with verbal out, you know, without touching the dog. And there is no lifting or choking the dog off.
But the dog in sport knows there's something, right?
Well, right. When you do the out in sport, you teach them if you out, then you give the dog a reward, right? And the reward for out is to bite again, right? Or bite something else, right? So that's a reward, because the dog like that is trained in prey. And you taking the prey away from him, and then you give it to him back, or when he outs, then you give him a toy. You see sometimes, you know, in sportism, the cops were trained, the dog outs and they give him a toy to bite into.
So it could be actually, in a way, more dangerous in a real situation where the dog backs off, that could be the next bite possibly because of the
Right.
sport.
Well, what happened is when you have dog trained that way to out when he's in prey, because his dog is in prey drive, that bite is his prey, and you're taking it away from him, right? Yeah. And so you gotta give him something else, otherwise the dog wouldn't out, right? So you give him a rebite usually. You can do it a lot. You know, you have a dog on a sleeve, and you say "poost," and he outs, and you say "yes," and give him a bite. Yeah. It's a game, right? I'm the friend of his. I'm not the bad guy to him. You know, I'm his friend. Me as a decoy. Yeah. And you can even do it yourself with your own dog. You know, so you give him a bite, he bites. You say "poost," he poost. Here, let's go. And you say, and you wait for like a 1.5 seconds, and you say "yes," and give him another bite. And you go back and forth. You can do it 10, 20 times. You know. Yeah. And then they give him the sleeve, and he carries it. And he says, "Okay, and I've done all these what I call tricks, and now I can have that sleeve and carry it to my car, right?" Yeah. Now, if you have a trained dog that way for police, let's say, so if you would out the dog verbally trained like that, what's going to happen? The dog will anticipate a bite. So you tell him "poost." Or out, and the dog outs, and now he expects he's gonna get another bite, right? Yeah. So he may rebite the bad guy, right? He may, and now you have a liability problem. Yeah. Okay, that's one thing, and then so why you may say so why not do you know, then there is another issue that when you have a, let's say, police dog or personal protection dog in an action, and he bites somebody, because all the training is of the sport and sportism is basically done in prey. Yeah. So you're teaching the dog in prey, right? And then you are on the street, and let's say the dog knows how to out in the prey, even when he is on the street. But if that dog got kicked or hurt somehow, or the bad guy challenged the dog will flip into defense, right?
He was not trained.
And he was not trained in defense to out. He was trained to out in prey. So now you have a dog who won out. And there's so many different little things, right? But those are the main ones which I just said, okay? So if you have so now you are with that dog on a street like a cop, or let's say private citizen, which is a personal protection dog, and he needs to use the dog for personal protection. He will try to out the dog verbally, and because there is conundrum, meaning opposing reasons why the dog's out, between prey and defense, and in sport and all that, getting a reward for the out to get another bite. Yeah. There's a high probability that dog may not either let go, or may, because he flipped into defense, from prey to defense, or he may bite again. Now, if stuff like that is going on, everybody has a cell phone and making videos of that, and the dog. When you say "poost" or "out" or "aus" or whatever language you use, and the dog doesn't out, now you gotta say it again. Now you gotta say it again, right? And then again, right? Or the dog outs and then he bites again. Now if the defense lawyer of the guy, that hoodlum who was getting bit, gets hand on video like that, and you go to court with that, you are gonna lose. And the guy is gonna make hundreds of thousands of dollars, or at least 100, or at least 40, whatever. I don't know, it's inflation, so probably at least 80 now, right? And that's a bad thing, right? They will say, well, he will, and you see it on video all the time, right? The cops are trying to get the dog off the bad guy, and the dog is not letting go, and everybody says, oh, the dog is not under control. And that's exactly what the jury is going to see in a court, right? The dog is not under control. Now, when you're lifting the dog up, it takes, if you do it right, you are not saying "poost" or "out." You are not saying that, because because it's for the dog's mind is it's not a good idea, right? And also for the liability reason, it's not a good idea, right? You just come and lift the dog up, and if you do it right, within 3-5 seconds, the dog let go and you pull him off. Nobody can say that you are not in control of the dog, right? Because you are in control. You come, lift him up, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, boom, and you're done. You know that's
we do it at training.
And you know you gotta be calm and collected about it, and don't do any high fives and all that. Just and pull him off. That's it, and you are in control. And legally, the liability is much smaller than if you would be trying to out the dog verbally in a real life working scenario or street scenario, as we call it, right? So basically, you don't want to take a chance, even if your dog is really good and even have an e-collar and everything, and he outed 99 out of 100 times verbally, even under stress. You don't really want to do it, because if that one time the dog he got punched in the face or something, and now the dog is just mad and doesn't want to let go, and you say out and he's in defense and he was trained prey or whatever, he just doesn't want to let go. And it's going to cost your department tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending how messed up the guy got, right? So you just lift and pull, and you're in control. Nobody can say anything, right? The other thing you can do is a brake stick.
If you enjoyed this content so far, please subscribe to our channel. Also, Hans has a podcast channel called Dog Training for Life. Check that out so you can listen to the audio version.
Right, we talked in
and we did that in the video, actually, the protection video.
For sale, yeah. But the brake stick is an excellent tool. You know, you look it up on internet what brake stick looks like. It's about this long, and it's like looks like a tongue depressor or something like that, right? Okay, or there's different shapes slightly, and you put the brake stick in the corner of the dog's mouth where he's holding on the bite. Right there's a little space there, so you just push it in and just tickle basically the dog's throat with it in the back, and dog gets gagging reflex and let go. Yep. And you know what? If you do practice it in training, you come to the dog with brake stick, they already know, so they let go right there. Okay, all right. But the problem is, you fumbled and the brake stick fall in the sewer system. Great, right? And now you have to what, right? So you can improvise. I just told Gabor here, I've seen video where the guy improvises welding wire, just kind of stick and tickle. Yeah. But if you have nothing else, you gotta be able to lift the dog up and pull him off, right? Yeah, So basically, the issue is why not to do it? It's a liability, and then you have the training issue, which is in sport you do it in prey, and when the dog is on the street, a lot of times, even so they train in prey, they flip into defense when the dog is being slugged or kicked or challenged negatively by the perpetrator.
And also the problem if the perpetrator, the bad guy, shirt gets ripped or the dog pulls it, or a backpack, the dog can be happy with that, right?
Well, yeah, that's another issue, but that's not really out issue.
No, it's not. But just going back a little bit to the issue of the sport training in real life, that could be happy with the item.
Right.
So we don't.
Well, in sport, basically, the decoy is a friend of the dog. Yeah. With most of the trainers, there are exceptions. And then and in a real street thing, the bad guy is the enemy. Yeah. And then when you do street bites with two I've already talked about it. A scenario: either the guy's running away and you want to catch him so he doesn't hurt somebody or get away, or he's come. That's what law enforcement does. Most of it, not all of it, but most of it. And then you have the guys coming at you. So you have the vectors. Remember, I was talking. Either the bad guy runs, dog runs behind him, and then you have the other way around, right? They go against each other, and so the that's very in sport. It's always running away, or there's a courage test but in courage test, the dog is still in prey drive. Right, courage test in Schutzhund type exercise, or IGP or whatever they call it these days. I keep changing it like underwear, man. The names is that when the decoy is running at the dog, they would say, well, he's running at him, so it's a defense if he's protective, and it's all prey. It's just like rabbit may run against dog, it's still prey drive, because all the training is based on prey. So we're on the street. I personally train dog when it's a real protection, it's in defense, and the prey is only piggybacking on the defense, right? So the defense is the strongest part. That's what I build the dog on. I'm telling the dog, this guy is a bad guy. Forget the sleeve or whatever, right? And there's no sleeve at first. And then when the dog barks at him, he gets rewarded by chasing the guy away, right? And the guy run away, and we praise it. You won, And in that situation, the sleeve is a reward. In sport, the sleeve is a reward. That's why they pull out of the suit or sleeve, and the dog is carrying the sleeve and trashes it, and good boy, and they run in a circle, and bad guy can come at you and beat you with 2x4 over the head, and dog can care less because he has a sleeve in his mouth. He's happy.
But no, this was good. I think you shed a light on the conversation, going from the conversation on Facebook to this about the outcommand. So thank you for giving more knowledge to everyone out there.
Nothing.
It's a humble man right there.
Yeah, well, it's just part. All this stuff. When you want to be a dog trainer, a lot of times people go and they go through some school or something, and they read the book, and they think they know everything. But you really need to. Even if you do the stuff the right way, it has to become part of you. You cannot just think about it or whatever. The training gotta be you. I don't care if it's for sport or if it's for protection. You gotta decide which way you wanna go. Work protection, but it has to become part of you. It's and I've done it for decades, and it just. I think it's part of me, and I don't even, when I was in high school, I had a problem with math a little bit, and my father hired me a tutor, Mr. Shores, and he was teaching high school, math in high school, so I always came and he taught me, and he says, you know what, you can memorize this stuff, but you will forget it. When you understand it and practice it and it becomes part of you, you will never forget it. Right? So it's important, first of all, when you do something, that you understand it. Don't just learn training because Joe Blow, dog trainer, told you that's how it's done. Which that's what everybody does, seems like, You got to understand, why is it done that way? And why is it done different way? And what are the differences between this way and that way? The training systems may be good, but in its own way. Like for sport you train this way, and for street you train that way. Don't try to have one baseball cap fits all, right? So you have to, and then it has to become part of you. You don't even think about it. You basically get conditioned, like a classical conditioning.
Yeah, it's like driving a stick shift.
Yeah, yeah, you don't think about it, right? You know, so it becomes part of you. You know, you turning left, you flip blinker, unless you live in Arizona. Nobody does that. Here blinkers are optional, but you know, it becomes part of you. You know.
You have to know what you're doing. I mean,
Well, that's that too. You know, you cannot just. Usually, if you don't love it, there's what we used to call 4-year burnout. If you can last with the dogs and doing dogs for more than 5 years, you become a dog man, and you will never let it go. You know, but even when you don't do it commercially, you still will have a dog, and you still will maybe do some training just for the kicks and giggles and stuff like that. You know, so, but there's a 4-year burnout. A lot of people go and they just quit at about 4 years. That's about the time.
average.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Hans.
You bet.